Hey, everybody, welcome back to this week's episode of Her with Amena Brown. And I've just had a lot of strange schedule things going on, y'all. So I haven't been able to bring guests back into the living room, but it is that time. It is that time today. And I'm very excited about the guest who will be here with us in our living room. Creator and writer of Black Liturgies, a project that integrates spiritual practice with Black emotion, Black literature, and the Black body. New York Times bestselling author of This Here Flesh, Spirituality, Liberation, and the Stories That Make Us. Welcome to the Her Living Room, Cole Arthur Riley.
Thanks for having me.
I know the people are clapping too, Cole. I mean, some of them are driving, so they can't. But the other people that aren't driving, they just clap too. I know they did.
Love that.
Cole, thank you so much for joining me. Y'all, I am so excited. Cole and I are just meeting, getting a chance to talk in real time for the first time. But I was very honored to be one of the folks who had the opportunity to get an early read on This Here Flesh, and had the honor of being one of the folks to get to write some words of an endorsement about this book. So, New York Times bestselling author, Cole, how does it feel?
It still feels like a dream, honestly. It's when, people like you say it that I'm like, oh, that happened. That was real. But yeah, it feels good and scary. But yeah, I'm happy.
Oh my gosh. I'm so excited for you and excited for the readers as well. I mean, I know many of you listening have probably already been enjoying Cole's writing in your essays and articles. And for those of us who are followers of Black Liturgies, we've been enjoying some pieces of the things that you write. But to get a chance to sort of see in this book, there is this sort of fullness that when you have encountered a writer in other short forms of writing, and then you get a chance to read their book, you're sort of getting more of the story of them, the story of their process in more of a fullness. Even though I know about book writing, there are many things we have to leave out of that, out of that process. But how exciting. So I have to start with something that's very important, which is snacks. And I'm starting with snacks, Cole, as the question that I want to ask you about, because this is leading into Philly food. And I do need to be honest about that. But I just want to start in general with snacks, because when I think about this podcast, I always think about what I do with my girlfriends. And we typically get together in one another's living rooms, and we're always sort of piecing together some type of snacks. If we're having a night that we're like, I don't want to go out, I don't want to see other people. I don't want to do that restaurant. I just want to come to your house and tell you what's up. I want to cuss. I want to watch TV, whatever it is. And we typically sort of bring our little piecemeal snack situations together. So when you get together with your girlfriends, what is your favorite snack to bring?
Okay. In the past 2 years, this is what I'm bringing. Flaming hot Doritos, not the Cheetos, the Doritos. And if you can find the super flaming hot Doritos that just hurt on the way down, that's what I'm bringing. So good. Twizzlers, usually. And then I know this isn't really people don't consider this snack food so much, but craisins, to me, craisins taste like candy and I will stick beside them. I love craisins. It's a sweet kind of tart, addition.
I thank you for bringing craisins into the chat, because they are not spoken of enough, in my opinion. I have done my own sort of impromptu trail mix situation in a craisins bag, just threw some peanuts up in there, threw an almond or two, a sunflower seed, shook that up, and I'm there already. I don't even have to try to find a trail mix that has the mix of things I like. Craisins are where it's at, people. Boy, on a salad, sprinkle some craisins, people.
Yep.
It does the work.
Makes everything go down easier.
I mean, that
Craisins.
like sweet tart situation. I want to thank you for bringing that to the table. This is my segue. We know from reading This Here Flesh that you have sort of a rootedness there in Pennsylvania and mainly in Pittsburgh, right? But you do have some roots in Philly as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I lived in Philly for a number of years.
I need to talk to you about Philly food for a moment here because
Uh-oh.
I went to Philly and I am a person who enjoys a city for its food. I am into that. And I went to Philly and I really was there. I mean, maybe this is touristy of me, but I really am there just trying to get this authentic cheesesteak. And I did that. It was great. But I really need to tell you what really changed my life about Philly is the hoagie. Like I have a lot of emotional feelings about the hoagies that I have enjoyed there. And there's some kind of first of all, I think the bread is not available where I live in Atlanta. I don't think people say they're making hoagies down here. I'm not sure they are because I don't think the bread's right. And then there's some sort of an herb, oil. There's something going on with some oil and some vinegar that when I try to buy those ingredients at the store and make a sandwich at my house, it's not doing what the hoagie is doing in Philly. So I would like to hear your thoughts about hoagies. And then I would like to hear if you could recommend like the food people should eat in Philly. Okay. What would you say? Please discuss.
Okay. I love a hoagie. I think Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania, we love a hoagie. Like you order pizza, but you can't order pizza without ordering a hoagie where I'm from and in Philly. I think it's all in the bread. We're not at like New York City level with our breads, but we're trying. I can't remember the place we used to go. I want to say Gino's, but that doesn't sound right. Maybe I'll send it to you after and you can include a hoagie shop in the show notes. I'm a big fan of dim sum.
Speak a word about dim sum today.
Love dim sum. I love the community. I mean, COVID times have kind of changed things a little bit, but it's this communal feeling, you know, you can have a little bit of everything for people who have buyer's remorse or, you know, are afraid. It's low risk, you know, because there's always something else that's being rotated. So love dim sum. There's a place called Dim Sum Garden on Race Street in Philly. Best soup dumplings I've ever had anywhere, including New York City. Don't come for me. Don't come for my neck. But
please don't.
Best. I went to New York City. I was like, oh, I can't wait for these soup dumplings. They were good, but I was fantasizing about Dim Sum Garden on Race Street in Philly. You have to go. The line sometimes is out of control, but bring cash. They don't accept cards. So that's your place for dumplings, dim sum. There's a Pakistani restaurant in West Philly called Waggi Wah. I've never in my life had Pakistani food. Never in my life before moving to Philly. This is the only Pakistani food I've ever had. So if it's not, I mean, the people there are from Pakistan. I assume it's authentic, but it is so good. It's like a different kind of naan. Like the naan they serve, it's slightly different than like an Indian naan and definitely different than like a roti, but it's so good. They give you like a whole like round. It's like a pizza round of their naan, which is good. I get the chicken tikka masala.
Wow.
Those are like the two big places that I have during the pandemic. Because I live in upstate New York now, and our food scene in Ithaca is just not, it's just not where it needs to be. During the pandemic, we can't go anywhere. You know, our shops are shut down and our restaurants are shut down anyways for dining indoors. Takeout, you know, if the food's already subpar, takeout, it's going to be even worse, you know?
Struggles.
So we drove 3.5 hours to Philly twice in the past 2 years just to get Dim Sum Garden and Waggi Wah takeout, drive it back home, heat it up and eat it. No lie. That's how good this food is. So yeah.
Yo, I can't knock the hustle. I respect that choice because during the pandemic, I have thought several times about the food in Philly. And now you've given me additional food to think about. I have a friend in my phone. I text her sometimes just to be like, boy, that herb oil situation on those hoagies. And she'll be like, what? Why is that what I'm getting here? Why are we doing this? And I'm like, it's important. And I don't know what you want from me. I'm just letting you know. Is there a way you could get like a bottle of that and send it to me down here? Because it's not computing here. So I thank you for that, because I was like, I feel like Cole is going to know the vibes, and you did know the vibes. Thank you, Cole, for that. I too, Philly, want to take a tour there. I too. It would be a longer drive for me, Cole, but when you said that, I was kind of like, I was like, hey, a little bit of consideration. Cole, what is your favorite Black movie?
Oh, Moonlight. It's not even just my favorite Black movie. It's just my favorite movie, Moonlight. I don't know what critique you can give that film. No. It's beautiful art, nuance. I mean, talk about nuance. Black characters instead of caricatures. Yep. There are some nuanced characters in that film that will stay with me until I die. You haven't seen Moonlight, today is the day. Tonight is the night. Watch it.
Y'all have to see it. It's kind of like, I think, and I remember I watched this before the pandemic, but I watched it at home. I didn't watch it in the theater. And there are some movies that I'm like, man, that's a movie you should see in the theater. And I'm certain I would have enjoyed Moonlight in the theater, but there was something about being at home, taking in that film, taking in the cinematography. I loved how gorgeous the skin of the characters. Yes. There were so many scenes where the light on the skin was just so beautiful, and so many layers to that story. There was some sort of sense of like comfort, or the way I took that in at home, that I don't know if I would have taken it in exactly that way, the same if I had watched it in a theater. So shout out to that. I recommend y'all, tonight's your night. Get involved with Moonlight. It is everything.
Beautiful.
What is your favorite? It could be a Black girl hairstyle, as far as a hairstyle you loved when you were a little girl, or it could be currently your favorite Black woman hairstyle that you love to wear.
It's got to be Senegalese twist for me. I mean, I know it might only be a few weeks that they actually stay in, but I just feel regal. I feel so regal when I have twist or braids in. I feel more mature. I feel like, I don't know. This seems weird to say, but like twists, braids have a way of like making me take myself more seriously. I don't know if it's because the women I admired growing up would have their hair in braided styles, but yeah, I like the way the twists look, but they just don't last how I need them to last all the time. But yeah, that's my favorite hairstyle when I can get it done. Times being what they are, it's hard to get my hair done the way I want.
Right. No, that's a fair point. I feel like the pandemic has I think it's given me more dreams of styles I wish I could try that I might not have access to at the moment. And then there are a few things I learned how to do better myself, because that was the option of what to do at my house. So I learned how to flat twist a lot better. Those flat twists were a struggle before the pandemic, but here we are. I just had time to practice, so I did. Talk to me about your favorite song to get the party started. Like, if you were at a party, what's the song that the DJ plays that you're like, and now the party has started?
Okay, this is an interesting question for me, because I'm not a party person.
Okay.
I mean, some would call me boring. But let me really try to take it back to like my college years. Maybe, was there something in me? Probably not. I'll tell you, like, when I'm in the car, what's like some pump up music. It's a stretch, because I only listen to like sad.
I mean, it could be music. A different type of party, Cole. Maybe it's not the type of party that people, are raising the roof or whatever. Maybe your party is more of a contemplative nature.
True.
That's fine.
You know what? That's true. That's my party. We're sitting, it's a candlelit living room. We're putting on Hotels 99% of the time. That's what we're putting on.
That's a good choice. Shout out to Jasmine Sullivan. I want to give a big shout out to that. Yeah. Also, I want to give a shout out to this Grammy that Jasmine Sullivan just won for Hotels, and the way she got, okay. First of all, finally, thank you, Cole, because yes. And the way she held this space for Black women when she got up there to make her acceptance speech, like,
yes,
I just had to touch my hand to my heart for a few minutes. I was like, come on. I was having that moment of like, oh, Jasmine, I'm looking at you. I'm so happy to see you winning. You know, like, I'm just happy for you. Congrats to you. And then that she sort of turned that moment back to us and said, like, Black women, this is for you. I was like,
this is
also
ours.
congratulations to me. I love to see that.
Yep. Beautiful.
Oh, that's a great one. That I do think, number one, I do think that gets the party started. And I love envisioning various sundry types of partying, Cole. It doesn't all have to look the same. And I like that you brought this into the living room. You can have a party to contemplate some things, you know, to sit in the room with the people, hold space with them. I get it. I feel it.
Yes. Thank you for liberating me into that kind of, that's the kind of party vibe I'm after.
I feel it. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you this. You're welcome to pass. But if you're willing to share, do you have a favorite cuss word?
I don't have a favorite. The one I probably say the most is probably damn. No, it's probably shit. I probably say shit the most. Yeah. You can draw it out, you know. Shit.
Come on, Cole. Yes.
It lends itself to poetry, you know, So
it is its own answer. It's like somehow someone could be asking a question and she could be the answer.
Yes.
The people who know when they hear that answer, they're like, and I thank you. You have told me everything I need to know. You could be asking that person about a store they went to, about if they know so-and-so, about if they went to the event that was last week. And if they say, she, which typically to me is followed with or preceded by some sort of mouth noise. It's like a she. Or a shit. It's a little mix like that, Cole. Yes. What gravity that word has. I like it. That's a good one. That's a good choice. Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about Toni Morrison, and the work of Toni Morrison comes up in Black liturgies. We are also seeing this here in the book. I want to talk about her work and how her work is a spiritual influence with you. Talk to me more about that.
Sure. Toni Morrison. So I first encountered her work in college. I'm trying to figure out a book I'd read by a Black author before college. I'm currently trying to revisit some memories and try to figure out, did I even read Black authors before college? But I encountered her work for the first time in college. I, of course, knew who she was, but I'd never actually read anything. And that was around the time that I was first really experiencing Christian spaces for the first time, or overtly Christian spaces. And this is the first time I was going to church regularly on my own. And it was a very white evangelical space, I should say. And to me, everything about college was just new. Like, people in my family didn't go to college, and it was just very different from the place I was coming from. And so I kind of just looped everything that happened to me into like this one big box of like, this is the unknown, this is new. So it was very difficult for me to kind of distinguish what I was learning in the classroom, you know, from the first time, to separate that from what I was experiencing and learning in church for the first time. I just couldn't compartmentalize those things. Like, the compartment was college. And so I found myself bringing Black. I studied English literature in the end. I found myself bringing Black authors into the pew with me. And I mean, thank God I had them to help me interrogate some of the things I was hearing, or the kind of binaries that were being presented. I just didn't find those spiritual binaries in Black literature. And I certainly didn't find them in Morrison's work. To explain that, I think Black literature, especially Morrison, there's something about how she was able to articulate the spiritual that wasn't about certainty, and it wasn't about clarity. It was about conveying the human experience and including the spiritual in that human experience, as opposed to this is what this means and X equals this. And I just love that and gravitated toward that kind of mystery. So Beloved, yeah, it's the most terrifying Morrison book, I would say.
Yeah.
But it's closest to me and closest to my spiritual formation. In Beloved, there's this kind of famous clearing. Toni Morrison gives us the space of the clearing, where if you haven't read it, the matriarch, Baby Suggs, she gathers her people. She sits in the middle of the clearing on this rock, and the women and the men and the children and the people are kind of waiting on the perimeter. And she says, children, let the children come. And she says, let your mothers hear you laugh. And the kids break out laughing. And then she says, men, come, let your wives and children see you dance. And then the men start dancing. And then she calls the woman to the center and says, cry, for the living and the dead just cry. And the woman let loose. And she describes the scene where, the women start laughing in the end, and the men sit down and start crying, and the children start dancing, and they all get tangled up in each other. And then exhausted, they just kind of lay there together. And then she gives her sermon. Yeah. And Morrison very specifically says she didn't tell them to go and sin no more, which is like the typical maybe white evangelical message,
sure.
Go and sin. That's the gospel, So she says that she didn't tell them that. She called them to awaken to grace. And then she delivers this sermon that's all about the body. Like, in this your place, we flesh that weeps, laughs, flesh that dances on bare feet in grass. Love it. And it's this message of loving the body, loving the flesh. And anyways, all that to say, that moment of the clearing, it's intergenerational, it's storied, it's emotional. It's not a practice of the mind. It's emotional. Yeah. It's embodied. And whenever I think about what I want my spirituality to be, that's where I go. That's the kind of spirituality I want to possess.
So was Beloved your gateway into Toni Morrison's work? Was that the first book of hers that you remember encountering?
Yes, it was. That was the first. Yeah, she didn't scare me away. But I mean, that was the first. And it's hard. It's hard to wade through. There's a real disorientation in the beginning of a lot of her work, and in a similar way, kind of to like Octavia Butler. There's this beginning that is just so disorienting that you're trying to figure out what's up, what's down, who's this, who's that. You have the matriarch being called Baby Suggs. There's so much and you could talk for ages about that, the beauty in that. But there's something about the beginning of Beloved that's just this slow connections, and she's not quick to resolve. And I think people like things that resolve.
Right.
People want things to resolve, and Morrison's really disinterested in that, which challenged me.
Yeah. Still, I mean, I love the idea that you were carrying some of this work into a church setting. Oh, I just love that, because so many of Toni Morrison's books feel so much like a spiritual text. I think that's such a powerful thing to think about. I'm like, let me see what Toni Morrison books I have downstairs next time I go up in the church, honey. Let me grab one of those. And they'll be like, somebody be sitting next to me like, what is this? This is not, I'm turned to a page and you are turned to
We're
a
not
page,
on the
this
same.
is not the same. And I'm like, you mind your business and let me do what I'm doing over here. I think my initial gateway into Toni's work was Tar Baby. My mom had that book for some reason in her library. And I remember taking it out and opening up the first couple of pages. And I was young enough to know that I was reading something amazing, and I did not understand a word of it. I was like, this is amazing. What is she talking about? I don't know. And then I think I tried Beloved at 12, and it was all manner of confusions. It was all manner of who's alive and who died.
Right.
And who died but is still alive.
Yeah.
Like all of, I mean, now, Cole, I have, which is something that I really loved about this here Flesh. I loved this about your book. It had this sense of feeling so grounded, so rooted in people and place. I loved that. And I loved that there was this way you sort of left a lot of space out there for us as the reader. You left a lot of space for us to not come into the text of your book and feel like you were there to give us answers. You were there to sort of be this, in some ways you sometimes felt like you were author, but also observing, and that you were sort of encouraging us as the reader. We step back and sort of, we look, we see, we think about what we perceive, right? And then there were times you're sort of inviting us into stories that happened to you or happened to members of your family. And then there were times that in that you were sort of there at the center of the story because it is happening to you, or as the story is being told to you, you know. And I loved that sort of breathing room that you left in there. And I think that is something as a writer I always admired about authors like Toni Morrison, that it was not to write a story to say, and here we derive an answer. Yeah. That was never the point, that it was to say, and here we are being. We're present in a space. We'll laugh, we'll cry, we will wonder, the page may end and we still don't know what happened to so-and-so. And maybe you need to think about that, reader, you know? I really, really loved that. Do you have a favorite of Toni Morrison's work that you love, or is Beloved that favorite for you?
Beloved is definitely that favorite. I mean, it's traumatizing.
Yeah.
Trauma on those pages, but there's so much beauty, and I just think it's so complicated. Maybe in a similar, for similar reasons as why I love Moonlight.
Yeah.
It's like it's such a complicated story where, you know, a person's motives are never completely clear. You know, no one is completely good. No one's completely evil. I think it's, yeah. I mean, you see that in a lot of her work, but yeah, Beloved's definitely my favorite.
I was thinking when you were talking about that clearing scene, I was like, what of Toni Morrison's work makes me feel that feeling? I think for me, it's the character of Pilate in Song of Solomon. I have actually mentioned this to a couple of friends to say, as I think about my Black woman spirituality at this season of my life, I sort of imagine myself in certain ways how Pilate appears in that story. For those of you that haven't read it, I mean, everything that Toni Morrison writes, just go read it. But in Song of Solomon, if I'm remembering right, I would love to reread this again now. I also sort of entered Toni Morrison's work really in college. I had those initial encounters when I was younger, but when you're in college, you're now getting to read these texts and sort of pull certain things out of that and think about the themes. And you have other historical texts that may be sitting around that, or other fictional texts sitting around that, which is something that I don't want to go back to some of how college was, but that part I did love. You know, I'm like, I wouldn't want to write all the essays again. Maybe not that part, but the part where the books got to be in conversation with each other, really loved that. And there was this sense in Song of Solomon that Pilate and her daughters, who are technically aunt and cousin to these other male characters that we're hearing about, that they're sort of existing on the periphery of what is considered acceptable in the society of their town. They to me, seemed like these Black women with hairy legs, and who will not shave an underarm, and who will dress however they will dress. And it doesn't matter, whatever is in fashion in the department store down there. We're here growing cabbage and growing collards outside of our house vibes, you know. And I was like, the older I get, the more and more I feel a little like that. I feel a little like I'm starting to like, but I guess in a way, Cole, spiritually, you know, sort of looking at some of these characters in the same way that you were talking about this character in Beloved. There's something about Pilot being this Black woman with no belly button. Ugh, Toni Morrison. And we have this question of,
I remember that.
Does she birth herself? Is that why she has no belly button? And we're not given any explanation as to why. It is not really addressed pretty much at any point later in the book. There's a lot of other things going on, but I just gravitated to her and just thought spiritually, what does that mean? What does it mean? What are the ways a Black woman gives birth to herself? What does that look like?
Wow.
I mean, that a writer could make you contemplate those things. It's amazing. When I was just reading you writing about Beloved and This Here Flesh, and even some of that terminology of This Here Flesh sort of coming back to us from Toni Morrison, I just thought, I resonate with that, Cole. I resonate with how, to me, your book and what you were talking about there in Beloved are in conversation. Did you feel that way too?
Yes. I mean, I was hoping. It's a tall order. It's hard to kind of approach her work because for so many of us, she's just hero. But I knew if I'm going to write a book that contains Christianity, I need to really be faithful to the way Black literature has spiritually formed me. You know, I wanted to be faithful to the entirety of my spiritual formation, which exists in and outside of a Christian tradition.
Yeah.
And it included Black literature. It included, you know, my family who aren't overtly religious. And so I needed to pull in, you know, things like storytelling and things like myth even, so that it felt true. That, you know, my dad, he's such a big part of the book. He wouldn't say he's a Christian. So how could I write a book that contains so many of his stories and these sacred artifacts and have the book contained by Christianity alone? It just didn't feel right. I needed to incorporate these other things. And in that way, I was able to kind of approach people like Morrison and really figure out, man, what did this do to me? You know, how is this a sacred text to me? And who are people in my life who are going to be terrified to hear that this is a sacred text to me? Yeah. You know, and do I care? Do I want them? Do I want them in the writing room with me? You know? So yeah, it brought up a lot of good questions.
I love that. I want to ask also, I guess I have a question that sort of comes with a comment or a reflection on something I also loved about the way you chose to approach spirituality and spiritual practice in this book. I really loved that it seemed like there was this space for the reader. Like, if you're here, reader, and Christian tradition is what you ascribe to, you're welcome. If you're here, reader, and you don't ascribe to that at all, you're welcome. If you're here, reader, and you used to ascribe to that, and now you've got lots of questions and tensions, here, you're welcome too. And I think that's a wonderful gift in a book that wants to bring sort of questions and beauty and tensions of spirituality to the table, to be that welcoming, that in a text, people would feel like they can come to the page there, wherever they are. Was that something that, as you were writing, felt like intentional on your part? Or did you feel, as you were bringing your family stories, your own stories of formation, that was just a present theme for you as well?
It was intentional because I've read books by authors who are Christian that kind of are trying very hard to teach you what to think and what to believe. And I think, you know, maybe if Christianity didn't have the history that it did, that would feel less problematic. But because it's been so perverted in and through white supremacy, yeah, I had to, I really wanted to push myself to be honest about all of my uncertainties. The thing about how whiteness moves in spiritual spaces, specifically in Christianity, is, you know, that supremacy that it craves in terms of politics, in terms of socioeconomic power, it also craves in terms of religion. It doesn't just want to, have a spirituality. Its spirituality needs to be supreme. It needs to be the best thing. It needs to be the right thing. And so much of Christian formation in certain spaces is about convincing you that you are right. This is right. And these other things aren't right. And I think that's completely, a symptom of white supremacy and mostly that. And I just resist that. I reject that. I don't want that to be my spiritual formation. It's hard. That's hard conditioning that a lot of us have endured, that your spiritual belief system has to be above in order for it to matter, in order for it to be meaningful. I've always been a skeptic. My the thing that my family says about me is, they'll say, Nicole was born a skeptic. You came out as a skeptic from the time I was a child. And I've always been a very uncertain person, a very maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And to be honest about that in writing this first book was really important because, ultimately I'm going to have to answer to myself, my 50-year-old self, my 60-year-old self. I want to be able to look back and say, I told the truth. I probably said some things that were wrong. I probably said things that I won't believe anymore by the time I'm 60, but did I tell the truth? And that became the lens through which I wrote, are you telling the truth about you with the information that you have and the experiences that you've had to this point? And as long as I did that, I had that kind of fidelity to self. I feel like I was able to write very compassionately toward readers who really don't know what they think, who really don't know what they believe, but they've been trained to think that they're supposed to know all of these things with certainty.
Do you have a favorite spiritual practice right now or in this season of your life?
Yes, I have complicated feelings about this spiritual practice.
I get it.
I've criticized it, actually. It's silence. I think there are a lot of valid critiques that I share about silence as a spiritual practice, especially, for those of us who have been silenced by the societies that we're being brought up in by whiteness. And so I have a complicated relationship with silence because I was not a very verbal child. I talk about that in the book some. I had something called selective mutism, which is, a childhood anxiety disorder, essentially, which makes it very difficult to speak around strangers. So I've always had a very tricky relationship with silence. It always felt like something I needed to overcome and conquer. But in this season, it's been really healing for me to try to find some good. Was there something special in those, moments of silence that I shared with myself as a little girl? Maybe there was something that was all about insecurity and anxiety, but also was there something else there, something I was listening to in myself that, a way that I became nearer to myself. So anyways, I've been trying to practice a kind of redemptive silence and it feels really empowering.
I love that. I love adding the word redemptive to that, a redemptive silence, which is sort of finding sometimes a fresh way or a different way, and maybe a different way than maybe what we were taught of how we use silence or how we're supposed to embrace that or not, all the things. I love the idea that even finding new or different ways to do that can be redemptive. I want to read a quote from your book. You wrote, "Joy, which once felt as frivolous as love to me, has become a central virtue in my spirituality. I am convinced that if we are to survive the weight of justice and liberation, we must become people capable of delight and people who have been delighted in." I love that. What's bringing you joy right now?
Well, reading usually brings me joy, but specifically, I'm reading 2 books. I'm reading Pleasure Activism and I'm reading Black Joy by Tracy Lewis Giggets. There's an M in there, I think. I'm reading Black Joy. Anyways, it's a bright yellow book, read in black lettering, and everyone should go out and buy it at a local bookstore. And it's that book in particular, both of those books in different ways are bringing me joy because they're really giving me permission to experience joy in the ways that feel right to me, as opposed to mimicking the joy around me. And I think just like many emotions, although I think joy is something bigger than an emotion, but I think like many other emotions in my life, I can tend to mirror them in other people as opposed to actually having them originate in me and like emanate out. Instead, it's like they come to me and they kind of rest on my skin, but they don't ever really get in. And I think that's what joy has been for so long. And you know, both of those books is just telling me it's okay. What does this look like for you? And for me, it might not look like, you know, my sister, who's very, very verbal and very charismatic and just so fun. And for me, it looks like more peace. It looks like, you know, sitting and you know, staring at something beautiful and trying to find some sense of peace and trying to be honest about the things that I delight in as opposed to hiding from them.
I also want to ask you this question related to joy as well. As people read This Here Flesh, what do you hope they understand about the connection between joy and liberation?
I hope that they would understand that the journey toward liberation and deeper liberation, it doesn't need your liberation isn't bigger. It's not deeper, you know, the deeper your trauma is or something like that, which I think we never articulate that necessarily. But I think that, you know, those are the stories we're given, right. You know, the ending, the ending is better because of the depth of the pain. I used to think that, sadly, I don't think that anymore. I think we will not get there. I don't think we'll get there. And I'm not talking about liberation as linear. I mean, I won't get there on a day-to-day basis. I can't approach it if I don't have some kind of habits and systems set up in my life that will keep me from despair.
Yeah.
Because I think liberation, you know, demands that we become very honest about the pain and about the terrors, you know, it demands kind of an unflinching awareness of all those things. If you're really telling the truth, if you're really paying attention to the pain, I find it very difficult to believe that you can approach liberation without first becoming succumbed by despair. And I think, you know, joy keeps us from that. And I think we're seeing that, you know, this explosion in the past few years of literature, of art, of content, if you want to call it that, online, that is kind of just pulling, you know, you see something different that's pulling on Black people, you know, in the wake of the summer of 2020, for example, and what was pulling at other people. You know, there was this sinister kind of hunger for pain awakened in some people. But then I saw, and like my Black friends, there was this appetite for joy, and people didn't understand it. They didn't know what to do with the memes and the videos and the, like, how could you do this now? You know, and it's like, well, you don't know. This is how we've survived, and we have inherited this. We have inherited this very rich system of joy as a means not for just survival, but also thriving, you know, and flourishing. So anyways, that was a rant. That was a bit of a rant, but
I love
as someone who's like demeaned joy for so long, I feel like I'm speaking to myself, you know?
Yeah. I love a good rant, Cole. So, you know, anytime you have a rant, you know, I'm always here for that. I keep a little rant in my pocket just because you never know when you need one. Just need a little rant sometimes. That's all. Cole, how can the people stay connected to you and your New York Times best-selling book and your work? Tell me where the people should go.
This Here Flesh, it's available anywhere books are sold, but preferably a local Black-owned bookstore.
Yeah.
You could buy it there. That just, does extra work, really. And then you can find me at colearthurriley.com, and there will lead you to any social media that you have that you want to follow. But you can also sign up for my newsletter where I'll share, you know, if I have articles published places. So
go to there, people. Go to there and do those things. Cole, what an honor to get to speak with you today. It's been so great.
My honor.
I'm so excited. So thank you for being here with us in the Her living room. I cannot handle the spice of those flaming hot Doritos, but I would be with you while you had some, while we're here in the living room.
Solidarity.
Yes, I would do that. I would be here with you. So thank you so much for joining me. Brown is produced by Matt Owen for Soul Graffiti Productions as a part of the Seneca Women Podcast Network in partnership with iHeartRadio. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast.